Hey, welcome back everybody. This is Alan Garber with Superclear Epoxy. We're here today to do a general overview and talk about our flagship coating, which is Superclear Table Top Epoxy. This has been a formulation we've made and sold for decades and upon decades. So what we're gonna do today is we're going to talk about what the main applications are for Superclear Tabletop Epoxy, as well as how to do it. All right, so we're gonna start a pour over here at our pour table and follow us along. Okay, so this epoxy, Superclear Tabletop Epoxy, is a 1:1 by volume mixture. By weight, it's going to be 100 of A to 83 parts of B. So what that's gonna do is, whether you're measuring in grams, ounces, pounds, whatever it is, by weight, it's 100 of A to 83 of B. Otherwise, by volume, it's a straight 1:1 pour. So we're gonna pour by volume today here. What we're gonna work on first is a seal coat over this. We sanded it yesterday with 80 grit and then 120, and that's gonna be enough to suffice. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use this for just like a little shelf. There was some cracking here in the wood, and there's some little, pits that we wanted to fill on the bottom. So what we did was, I'm sure you saw it in the film earlier, is we used our Super CA glue with an accelerator, and we just sprayed a little of the accelerator down, put the glue down, and then sprayed the accelerator over it, gave it like 10-20 minutes, and then came back and it was rock hard. So we just sanded that back down, again going with 80 to 120, and that's where we're at now. So what we did after we used our Super CA glue, we just came back with our Super Clean, sprayed it on, wiped it down just to make sure that we got all the residues, any fingerprints, anything like that, because epoxies love picking up residues. So you always want it before you pour on a raw surface like that, or if you're pouring multiple layers, after the first layer is cured, you definitely want to wipe that down first with either our Super Clean or isopropyl alcohol 90% or higher. Remember that. If you're going to use ISO, use isopropyl alcohol 90% or higher. And t-shirt rags. So if you watched our liquid glass video, t-shirt rags, we get these pretty much upcycled. They're professionally cleaned, and all dirt and residues are removed. So all I'm gonna do now is use this t-shirt rag to wipe down anything that might be on there, just to make sure to get it off, and then boom, that one's done. So here's our Superclear Tabletop right here. This is our 2-gallon kit, and you can find that on our website or through the link below, or Amazon. So I'm gonna open this bad boy up. Go, there's that one, and there's the B side. All right, so today, right now we're gonna go ahead and pour a seal coat. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna help seal this wood and prevent any bubbles from getting into the main flood coat from the wood as the wood's heated, because as you know, epoxy, it heats through a chemical reaction. So as that heats a substrate that's porous like wood, the wood is going to start to release air due to the heating. So we're gonna go ahead and put that down. Then we're gonna come back about 2 hours later, check it, and it usually at 70 to 72, usually between 2 and 4 hours later, you can come right back on it. And what this does is it saves you a lot of time, because you're gonna get a chemical bond at that point. So it's gonna be tacky, and both layers, old and new, are going to be able to bond. Otherwise, you'd have to go back through and sand it, then spray it down with ISO or Super Clean, and then wipe it down again, and then go through the whole process. So just trying to save you some time. So we're gonna go ahead and pour our B side first into our mix and measure. For a seal coat for something like this, we're only sealing the tops and the sides. We don't need much. So, and I'm gonna use my hands to actually spread it out and show you how to do that. So I'm gonna do like a 12-ounce pour basically. That should be plenty for a thin coat like that. So I'm gonna do roughly 16 ounces. So I'm gonna do 8 ounces. B side first. If you watched the liquid glass video, the reason why is because it's thinner and less likely to stick to the sides, therefore creating unmixed material in your pour. I'm gonna do A. So I'm gonna measure it in the same cup because, as you know, depending on how these cups are printed, if the print is higher, your first pour is not gonna match your second pour based on volume. So you definitely always want to do that from one cup to the other. Pour that out. Now here's the important part. You're gonna wanna mix this slow. And if you wanna think about the speed, think about how would I stir a hot cup of coffee that's filled all the way to the brim? Well, you're gonna stir slowly. And what you're gonna do in the first 3 minutes is you're gonna stir 3 to 5 minutes. The first 3 minutes, you're gonna wanna go ahead and scrape the sides and the bottom to ensure that you're scraping up anything that's stuck to those surfaces so you can get them fully incorporated. And you see how I'm stirring now? I'm doing some figure eights, but I'm coming around, I'm scraping the sides, scraping the bottoms. And what this does is, our formulation is pretty darn thick, and there's a reason for that. It's going to be able to build millage on the surface as a coating. So we wanted it thick. The problem is that because it's thick, if you stir it too vigorously, you're going to inject a lot of air or impart a lot of air into this material. And what happens is that if you're stirring way too fast, and we'll have another subsequent video on mixing and mixing correctly, where we do a compare and contrast on how we're doing it now versus using stirring it faster, while also with by hand and using a drill mixer, and you'll see the difference. But what this does is this prevents a lot of air getting into it. Therefore, you're gonna have a nicer pour. It's gonna be crystal clear. You're gonna love it. As soon as the two parts mix together, it starts to cloud up a little bit. That's the chemical reaction starting to take place. You're going to notice that it eventually starts to clear up between minute 3 and 5, and that's telling you that it's getting mixed properly. So this resin, just so you know, is not meant for casting at all. Now, you can cast in layers, but typically this is going to be used as a coating or poured into a mold at a maximum of 1/4 inch at a time. That's it. So 1/4 inch, cure, new pour, 1/4 inch, not 1/4 inch, then go mix up another 1/4 inch worth and then throw it in there. That doesn't work. This is not a casting resin at all. Additionally, when you're mixing this, you really don't want, because this is a highly reactive formulation, you don't, and it cures fast, you definitely do not want to mix more than a 1/2 gallon of total volume. That means a quart of A, a quart of B, that equals a 1/2 gallon. You don't want to do a 1/2 gallon of A, 1/2 gallon of B, no, not at all. And that's per mixing bucket. Once you spread the mass out, because this is a mass dependent product, the longer it stays in mass, meaning here consolidated in your mixing container, the more volume you have and the longer it's in there, the quicker it's going to want to start curing. Once you spread that mass out, it's going to start curing at a slower rate, okay? Because there's no heat buildup. Well, I wouldn't say no heat buildup, there's far less heat buildup. So you'll notice here, that this has gone and turned clear. That is a much clearer mixture. So we're getting there, we're almost there. There's a couple of styrations that I see, but other than that, we're good to go. So I'm gonna give it another minute and then we'll go ahead and pour. I'm done mixing the material and I'm gonna show you now how to pour this stuff. So I'm gonna elevate it so this piece of wood doesn't get stuck to the bottom here. All right. And so we don't just dump it in one spot. What we do is we try and make it easier for this material to get spread out. All I'm trying to do right now is put a very thin layer on this. There's a couple of ways you could do it. You could either do it by hand, gloved hand obviously, or you can use a brush, like a foam brush. We have these, we sell these. Or you can use your hand as sort of a squeegee this way, or you can use your hand this way as sort of a notched trowel. So you're moving material, but you're also leaving material behind. And the material that you're leaving behind is gonna then now start self-leveling. and then you can do it that way. But I'm gonna do it a couple of different ways so that you can see how the application goes. So first off, we're gonna go through and we're gonna pour the length of this to help spread this out. Use a foam brush. So you're gonna go through, and all you really want is a very thin layer. If it were to be any thicker than this, you're basically gonna have a flood coat. That's not what we're after here. So we're gonna spread this stuff around like that, right? To get an extremely thin layer. We don't want to put a thick layer on it. We just want to move this stuff around so that this whole board is what we call wetted out, right? So you use that, that's fine. What I like to do is I like to use my hand, especially on these kinds of applications, a seal coat. So I'm using my hand to move it around. I could also use it as a trowel. If you see, if I use it as a trowel, see I'm pushing material, but I'm also leaving behind. It's gonna start self-leveling. You can already see that happening. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with some heat just to pop some of these surface bubbles. So what we did here is we actually put more of this material on than we needed. So this is a seal coat right here. If you see what we're doing, I'm actually removing some of this seal coat because it was too much. All you want to do is wet it out. That's it. And you notice the reason why we did this, because, well, one, that's the proper way of sealing this wood. Two, this wood was drinking it up at such a rate that it was going to cause bubbles. So you definitely don't want to deal with that bubble issue. And by putting this very, very thin layer on the top of it, you're not going to have that bubble issue at all. We've got this out here, we've basically wetted this wood out, and so our next plan of action is that we're gonna leave it for 2 to 4 hours. It's about 70 to 72 in here. We're gonna wait for it to get hard but tacky, what we call barroom floor tacky after college beer night. Or you'll hear us relate it to, have you ever stuck your arms down or put your elbows down on a Waffle House countertop? One of those things. So that's what we're looking for. That's the kind of tacky that we're looking for. Not enough that when you touch it, comes back with your finger as you pull away. No, we just want it tacky, like it's sticky. That's it. And then we'll go ahead and do our flood coat. Or depending on your wood, if it's really porous wood, I suggest go ahead and do one more seal coat. You always want to make sure this wood was kind of bubbly, so I'm a little concerned that maybe it has a lot of air pockets in it and I might need to go over it with another seal coat. So we're gonna stop here. We'll be back in a couple hours, check on it and see where we go from there, all right? All right, so we're back here. We're checking out the seal coat. It looks pretty good. So I think what we're gonna go ahead and do is go ahead and attempt the flood coat pour. So I've already poured 8 ounces of B-side. So we're gonna put that into our other mixing cup here that you can kind of barely see. Sorry about that. We're gonna scrape the cup to make sure we get all of this material in. All right, now go ahead and pour the A side. 8 ounces of A side, because it's a 1-to-1 formula. We're measuring by volume. So we're gonna give it, if we poured 8 ounces of one side, we're gonna pour 8 ounces of the other side. If it was 128 ounces of one side, which don't do that, because we already told you earlier on the video, in one mixing cup, don't do more than a ½ gallon total volume. So now this goes into the mixing cup. So 8 ounces and 8 ounces. Okay, and remember, we're stirring slow for the first 3 minutes. We're going around stirring slow like a hot cup of coffee filled all the way to the brim. You're gonna stir that slow. Why? Again, not to stir in air. You don't wanna whip air into it by stirring too vigorously. You'll never be able to get that air out, because when you whip it in there, it ends up being very tiny bubbles. And because of the viscosity of the tabletop being thick, they'll just be suspended. So that's why you'll see sometimes, and I've made this mistake, whipping too vigorously, pour, and you're like, what the hell are all these bubbles doing in here? Or why does it look white? That's what's happening. So we're gonna mix this for 3 to 5 minutes. The first 3 minutes, we're scraping the sides and the bottom to make sure that we get all of that unmixed material integrated, and we're just going slow. That's it. And then the last 2 minutes, you're not gonna scrape the sides or the bottom, you're just gonna stir. Yeah, and this is looking nice and tacky, but it's still, and you can see it here. Just before I forget, this wood that we have here was provided by Black Forest Sawmill. It's a big partner of ours here in the industry, and definitely check them out here. You can see their link and their number behind us. It's owned by a really nice guy named Sean Black and his family. A lot of history in Virginia, and he's a really great guy, really great business. All right, so we're almost there. This is starting to clear up. That means both sides are starting to mix and integrate evenly. So another minute and we'll be good to go. So okay, so here we are, we've got it. We're gonna go ahead and pour down here. So remember, we're pouring all over the length of this to make sure that this is all coated. Here's a pro tip, definitely once you've got the majority of it out and you see how it's dripping right now, let it drip for a while. Don't scrape the cup, because there may be some unmixed material in here that's stuck to the sides, and you're gonna put that unmixed material into your pour, and that's gonna not come out real great. You're gonna have some soft spots or uncured spots, things like that. Depends on what kind of unmixed material and where it is in the stage, its stage of being mixed. All right, so I'm gonna use my hands. I like to use my hands more than I like to use anything else, mainly because it gives you more control, it's faster, I can wet out the sides a little better, and this will all, as long as you break the surface tension, some of these areas that aren't getting it on there, this will lay down for you just fine. Now that we have all this spread out, we've got some bubbles here and there, but that's about it. So I'd caution anybody trying to pop bubbles, don't put a lot of heat on this, don't put a lot of effort in this. You should only be able to go over it once and you're good. Once you're done pouring, this stuff will go ahead and pop on their own afterwards. You can see there's not very many bubbles based on how I applied it. Put the seal coat down first, great, gave it some time to harden and tack up. Barroom floor tacky after college beer night is what we call it. And then going ahead and following that same mixing procedure, 1-to-1, you know, between one cup to the other, mixing it slowly, then pouring it. Now you get this. You don't have an immense amount of bubbles that you're dealing with or trying to contend with. And additionally, you've got big bubbles that rise to the top and pop. And then so what we're gonna do now, final step, we're just gonna hit it. So I'm gonna turn it up, get it done faster. And you don't need to get really close to it. You don't want to get close to it because you don't want to put a lot of heat into the epoxy. You see that? See how it lays down? Just like that. So we've got one little spot here that doesn't want to stick. So what I'm doing is I'm just running this along to break any surface tension. That's it. Kind of dimpling a little bit, and that can happen. So you just want to break that surface tension so it'll go back, and I can see it right now. It's already leveling out. And you just give it time and it'll be just fine. And you can tell, if you look at it, aside from that one little spot, this whole thing is laying out just fine. We've got this all laid out here, and I'm already noticing some issues. So one issue, we probably should have sealed it. One issue is the bubbles. We probably should have sealed it a second time. We're starting to see bubbles in just certain spots, boom. And what that's indicative of is those spots are a lot more porous and not as hard as, say, another part of the wood. That means that they're going to push air out in the form of these bubbles. Should have put another seal coat layer on there and then come back and do this. So this is extremely important and why you should be paying attention to what kind of wood you have and making sure you're putting on enough seal coats. Because if you don't, you'll get little spots like this. And so what we'll probably do, if they don't pop on their own, stop and pop on their own, we're gonna have to come back through here and then seal the bottom so it's not sucking air up through it, through the wood, and then coming out in the form of bubbles. And then also, essentially, this pour would be another seal coat, and a much thicker one. So we would just give it a light sand and then go wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol, 90% or higher, and then go over it again, and you're good. So we'll get back to you as soon as this cures fully, and then we'll revisit this topic. Thanks. All right, everybody, we're back. We wiped this down. We went ahead and sanded the entire bottom. All those issues before that we thought we had aren't there. They relieved themselves. All the bubbles are gone. It's beautiful, glassy finish. You know, now that we're done with this project, I hope you guys can go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. That way you'll be notified when we have a new video coming out, and we can keep you guys entertained. All right, thanks.
You having a hard time?
Yeah, dude. Get open. All right, there we go. I guess all that 5 a.m. working out's been helping me out a lot. You're gonna stir that slow. Why? Again, not to stir in air. You don't want to whip air into it by stirring too vigorously. You'll never be able to get that air out, because when you whip it in there, you whip it good, and then yeah. Hey, we're back. Okay. We're back. Okay. Okay. Like a fucking idiot.
Like that. I didn't notice it until you said it.
Hey, we're back. Okay.
Okay. Jeez.
Okay.
Step my back.
Mom.
Trauma.
All right. Don't put that in there, my mom. My mom's gonna watch this and be like, "What a little shit."
Yeah.